Alright guys, today we're going to be doing a little bit of a video on what race, birth sign and class to pick in Oblivion. Oblivion is much more of an RPG than Skyrim ever was, and these early decisions are pretty important. But don't worry if you're a new player coming to Oblivion and you don't really understand what's going on. It's not really that complicated, to be honest, once you get your head around it, and that'll basically be true for you after watching this video. It's not going to take very long. In fact, I bet I can be done explaining it by the end of smoking this crappy flavoured cigar. Honestly, it is quite nice though. I got this recently from Gdansk in Poland. Anyway, so in Oblivion, honestly, the races are not made equal. It is fairly imbalanced. Mods did fix this, you know, in Oblivion's original lifetime. So let's cut to the chase. We've got the stat menu open here. Okay, we've got the attributes, the attribute bonuses, and the skill bonuses. And these change when you pick your different origin. It used to change when you picked a male or female, which was actually quite interesting, but it doesn't do that anymore. Now, all of this is irrelevant. Okay, all of the starting bonus attributes and skills are totally irrelevant if you want to build a good character. If you want to optimize your character, then just ignore this. If you want to RP a particular race class combo and you just want to kind of pick the race that you want, that's fair enough. Bear in mind you do spend most of the time playing the game in the first person, just remember that. But really, you shouldn't build your character in a short-sighted way, like all the bonuses that you can get at level 1 leaving the sewers. You want to think what's going to be best mid to late game, because when you're about level 10 to 15, because of how leveling works now in Oblivion, you can get your attributes up so incredibly quickly and get your skills up very quickly, especially with training. Gold is very easy to farm in the game as well. We're going to have a video about that very soon. Again, all these like starting bonuses are kind of irrelevant. The only time I'd really argue for them is when you are playing on max difficulty, but save that for people who are doing crazy YouTube challenges. That isn't really a fun way to play the game. So instead, what we want to do is to optimize around what bonuses the races give that are a permanent bonus that other races cannot obtain, because then late game you're standing around with that bonus and other races don't have it. You are at an advantage. Now, in my humble opinion, guys, most of the time when I'm playing this game, I do just pick the high elf, and that is because of the 100 Magicka bonus. The only time I wouldn't is if I'm making some kind of RP build that doesn't involve any magic at all, but I usually always implement some magic into my build. High elf obviously do have a weakness to all of the elements, but you can very, very easily mitigate that mid-game. It's honestly just one enchant. You can even do it at level 1 actually if you just buy the Hands of the Atronach, which is very easy to do as well if you go in for heavy armor. Do not worry about that weakness. You can mitigate that weakness easily, and if you do the maths and work out everything late game, High Elf always ends up being the most optimal race without a shadow of a doubt. However, I would also recommend the Breton. Now, the High Elf has 100 bonus to Magicka points. That's on the character permanently for the whole of the game. The Breton has 50, but then also a 50% resistance to all magic damage. And I would recommend this particularly for new players, as playing with that 25% weakness, it can be a bit of a pain, and it can be quite difficult early game playing a High Elf, particularly when you're up against people casting shock spells, because shock spells are just instant and you can't dodge them. High Elf does demand you to get better at the game and get better at actually dodging magical damage. So Breton is just like that easier, safer option if you just kind of want an easier playthrough. You don't want one that requires more skill. Now, the other one I want to talk about is the Orc. Now, if you're going for a pure warrior build, you are saying to yourself, I'm not going to use any magic on my playthrough, fair enough, that could be interesting, then I would argue that the Orc is definitely the best for that. Now, the Orc has 25% resistance to Magicka damage, just like the Breton. It's just half what the Breton has. And that is a permanent bonus on the character that it can be obtained by other ways, but it's permanently on the character without any enchants. Okay, you may say, well, what about all the other bonuses? You know, Argonian Breathing Underwater, or the Khajiit Night Eye spell, the Command Creature spell for the Wood Elf. Well, all of these spells can be obtained in the game. Okay, you can just make these spells or buy these spells. So, again, like, it's some, like, even the adrenaline rush ability of the Red Guard, you can just create that in the Spellmaker later on. You know what I mean? Whereas these races, the Breton, the High Elf, and the Orc, they have a permanent bonus to your character that cannot be matched, and it doesn't require an enchant. And then when it comes to the origin, just pick the... Obviously, it's going to change your starting attributes. Just pick the ones that you want for your character. You know, what attributes you want a little bit of a bonus on early game. But again, remember, it doesn't really matter that much because you can upgrade your attributes so quickly now with the new leveling system. You get 12 virtue points, they're called now, every time you level up. I mean, I'm like level 10 on my character I'm playing at the minute. I already have 2 attributes maxed out, you know what I mean? It's so much easier now, it doesn't require all the boring power leveling and min-maxing than the original Oblivion did require. Now, when it comes to picking a birth sign, we now know that attributes and stats are kind of basically pointless because they can be increased by leveling up. So you probably already know what I'm going to say. The best birth signs are the ones that are going to provide a permanent boost to your character. And this is going to be the Mage, the Apprentice, and the Atronach. And now actually the Lord. All the ones that improve attributes, you just have to be a bit more patient. Basically, I mean, look at the Warrior. Okay, so that is basically... That's basically 4 levels of virtue points. So, again, like, you just kind of... You can get this birth sign just by leveling up 4 times. That's the way I kind of think about it. Yes, it's nice to have earlier in the game, but again, we want to think more late game. Late game is when the game actually gets difficult. Early game, this game is pretty easy, to be honest. So, you know what I mean? Now, my favourite is definitely the Mage, because it just gives you 50 bonus points. Bob's your uncle, okay, and then you're good. The problem with the Apprentice is you get a 100% weakness to Magicka. I don't like this one too much, okay, because it means that you have to optimize your character around mitigating that weakness to Magicka. I mean, you can just risk it for a biscuit and be an absolute glass cannon. If you're going to play with the Apprentice, it's very difficult to play, in my humble opinion, without Conjuration or without some kind of companion, okay, because you need someone else to take the damage. You need some other mob, some pet, to kind of distract the enemy so you just don't get whacked all the time. Remember that shock spells are just instantaneous. You can't dodge shock spells that easily, and you can just get utterly one-shotted as a high elf apprentice, okay, by a V Dromora in the first Oblivion Gate. So just bear this in mind. It's just much safer normally to go for the Mage. I think the Lord is a very cool birth sign now. It used to be kind of crap, to be honest. And it's mainly because of that resist magic of 15%. You know, if you're playing an Orc or a Breton, that's going to stack up as well. So you're going to resist a lot of magic damage. It's not just from spells, remember guys, but you're also going to resist enchanted weapons, which again do appear more late game too. Now, the oddball one here is the Atronach. So this actually grants you the maximum amount of potential starting magicka that you can have if you have a high elf Atronach. That's the most magic that you can start off in the game. It's an extra 250 points. The problem is your magicka is stunted. In Skyrim, the regeneration was slowed down. In Oblivion, it's totally stunted. Your magicka doesn't regenerate at all. It can only be regenerated by potions, well-keyed stones, whatever you call them, and then obviously absorb magicka enchanted weapons. So honestly, in my humble opinion, normally builds that work around the Atronach birth sign, if you're actually going to do a mage build, they're just a faff. They're just a faff, and it gets a little bit boring. If you can make it work, you make it work, but really it's going to be very irritating without having that enchanted sword or blunt weapon or whatever that is going to be absorbing magicka back. It's going to be a pain in the backside without that. And I am just presuming that the telekinesis, drain fatigue, spell creating trick to get infinite mana with the Atronach birth sign isn't going to work with this remastered version of Oblivion. I'm just presuming that. I haven't actually tested it. I doubt it. However, again, if you're going through a pure warrior build or a sneak thief build, whatever, that isn't going to use any magic at all, then the Atronach stone, sorry, it used to be called stones, now they're called birth signs, it's actually quite good because you get that bonus magicka, which can help for the very rare occasion that you are going to cast a spell, but also because of the 50% spell absorption, okay? And you can stack that with other spell absorption enchantments, and it becomes very, very useful. But again, the Atronach, it's always a bit of a faff. And I think if you're going for a pure warrior build, in my humble opinion, I would just go for the Lord instead, because, yeah, you cannot argue with that permanent Magicka increase at the start of the game. Now, when it comes to picking a class, this is where you really shouldn't listen to much advice, to be honest, because this is where you build your own build, and you should, knock yourself out and have fun and kind of experiment with what kind of build works. Literally anything works in Oblivion. I have done so many builds over the years that have combined so many different things, but nonetheless, I'll explain the system a bit more and give some recommendations. Now, totally ignore all the classes. But a little trick for you, whatever picture that you want to be your custom class, which is what we're going to do, by the way, click the picture that you want. Say I want this picture, the rogue, then press custom class, and then you will get that picture. Now, this first screen specialization, basically you're just going to get a little bit of a level bonus to all of the specialization skills. Combat skills, it's going to be like, not one-handed, blade, blunt block, armor, everything like that. And stealth is going to be like light armor, bows, everything like that. Magic is going to be alchemy and all the magic schools. And it also makes them level up a little bit faster, which is nice. Generally, the advice here, particularly for a new player, when you're picking a build, you kind of do want to kind of make sure your skills, the major skills that you pick later, are not too spread across the specializations, because then you'll probably level up much slower. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter that much, guys. I think you should just have as much fun and creativity as you want with the class creator system, in my humble opinion. And then you also get like a tiny bonus to your starting attributes. You may as well just pick the ones that you like. For a mage build, you're very likely going to pick intelligence or willpower, or strength and endurance for a warrior build, or agility and speed for a thief build. Personality, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, I never bother with personality because I think it's just utterly pointless. The reason why is because you can always persuade people, and they can always... It's definitely pointless if you're going for illusion magic. Never pair personality or the speechcraft skill with illusion. It's totally redundant because you can just charm people with illusion magic. And generally, yes, you're going to get a bit more money and stuff, but like you can level up personality so easily just by playing the game. I think it's better to focus on combat stuff, in my opinion. I would only really pick, improving personality or speechcraft if you cannot think of like the last skill that you want to put onto your class, okay? Or if you really want to roleplay as like a mercantile bard build, then fair enough. And you want to make like more money early game, it is kind of useful, but like, again, that it's so easy to make gold in Oblivion that I just don't think you need to do it that much. Only because I have the knowledge that I have about making gold. I just kind of think that, skills and attributes that increase my gold farming are pointless. But anyway, I'll have videos about that coming very soon. So in this screen, you're going to pick your major skills. Your major skills get like a bonus 20 points. And then also they're going to increase more rapidly, which is advantageous. And yeah, this is where you're going to make whatever build that you want, knock yourself out. Here are some recommendations though. Like if you're doing a warrior or a tank build, what goes really well together, which I think is quite underappreciated, is heavy armor, okay, and alteration. You may think, well, what's the point in getting like alteration for the shield spells when I've already got heavy armor on? Well, early game, they are obviously going to stack. You're going to have a ridiculous amount of armor rating low level. Eventually, this does taper off, obviously, when you're heavy armor. It takes a long time for you to have a full set of heavy armor that absolutely maxes out the amount of maximum armor points, by the way. So it's always worth having a little bit of alteration. But also, alteration has feather spells. And feather spells reduces the impact that heavy armor has on your speed early game. So early game heavy armor builds are really annoying because you're really slow over time, but you can totally mitigate it with feather spells, which is very nice. I would strongly recommend Conjuration with any archer build or range destruction magic build because it is useful to just have that extra pet enemy there that's going to distract the enemies a little bit, while you can run away and cast from a range without the, mobs chasing you down and killing you, which can be problematic and irritating. Destruction with a weapon skill is also very, very underrated, or even not even a weapon skill, but but bow as well. So one very, very powerful way to play this game is to basically enchant a weapon with, let's say, fire damage or whatever damage you want, and then pair it with weakness to that element spells in the destruction tree. So if you imagine you cast a weakness to destruction, a weakness to magic or weakness to fire on the target by 50%, and then you strike the enemy with +5, or let's say +10 fire damage, that means that it's going to do an extra 5 damage on each swing, okay? That is a lot of extra damage. Yeah, trust me guys, one of the most overpowered builds in this game is to pair destruction with weapons and bows. It is very, very overpowered. And then you can take it a level further, have a weakness to poison and a weakness to fire damage on the same weapon, poison your weapon, and then you're doing a ridiculous amount of damage. That's probably the way in this game to maximize your damage output. I also think Armourer is pretty essential for any weapon type style damage build, because Armourer, when you get the skill high enough, you can actually repair the item. Instead of it being 100, you can get it up to 125, which actually does increase its damage just that tiny little bit further. And also, it will slightly increase your total armor value, which is even better. Destruction also goes very well with hand-to-hand, because you can use destruction spells to drain a target's fatigue, and then start punching them, because obviously fist damage does fatigue damage as well as health damage, and this way you can deplete who's texting me this time? Go away. You can deplete the fatigue of an enemy faster, and obviously when their fatigue is depleted, they start falling over on the ground and stuff, and it makes it a much easier target to kill. Sneak and illusion, guys, go very, very well together, because the spells there that kind of mitigates you making mistakes, okay? So let's say that you kind of cock up and you get detected. Well, you can, honestly, this always happens when I'm recording videos. You can use an invisibility spell to, just basically have a factory reset and try again, or you can calm the target and then get up behind him and get your sneak attack that you want off. It does definitely complement sneak builds, and if you're going to do Dark Brotherhood and Thieves Guild stuff, sneak and illusion, very, very, very powerful. I wouldn't, honestly guys, though, a lot of people may also recommend mysticism with a sneak build, for major life detection. I honestly wouldn't recommend that, because you can get a cheap life detection spell at level 1 that doesn't require you to actually be skilled in mysticism at all, and you can just use that for that purpose. Yes, the range isn't that great in it, but it definitely is good enough. My last recommendation really is alchemy. I rarely do a build about alchemy, because alchemy is so ridiculously useful for every single build, whether it's making health potions, magicka potions, or damage health potions. Restore fatigue potions are very underrated as well. Honestly, when you have alchemy, it totally makes mercantile and personality redundant, because you can make so much gold of alchemy, and it's just like taking candy from a baby. And restoration can also go well with tank builds to fortify your damage or fortify your defenses, or obviously to heal. One thing to remember, guys, though, is spell coefficiency. When you have armor equipped on your character, it reduces the power of your spells. It's normally going to be about 10%, but it depends on the skill that you have in that armor rating. That spell coefficiency will get better over time. But just remember, it's normally, when you start playing the game, it's going to be 85-90%. Which means when you cast a spell that does 10 fire damage, it's only going to do 8 fire damage if it's at 80%, and then obviously if it's at 90%, it'll only do 9 fire damage. And this also affects the level rating of certain spells, like illusion spells and stuff like that, which can be very irritating, because you're trying to cast a spell thinking it's going to work on a mob, but it's not going to work because you've got armor on. Just something to bear in mind. Pure magic builds are usually better when you have absolutely no armor, so you can totally maximize the effectiveness of your magic. And then if you need armor rating, you can enchant a little bit of armor rating onto your character, or just use alteration to basically do it for you. Anyway guys, my cigar's finished. Told you I'd smash this video, by the time it takes me to smoke a crappy little cigar. My name is the Night Goblin. If you liked the video, please do subscribe. We're going to do some more like write-up versions of all my videos, and which will probably include a lot of bonus tips and stuff like that. So please do subscribe. I do want to go hard with making a lot of Oblivion videos over the next few months. It's my favourite game of all time, and I know so much about the game, not to toot my own horn. But I've always loved making these videos. Anyway, I'm blabbering on a bit too much now. My name is Night Goblin. Ciao.